One of the problems with lockout laws years ago that actually had, I reckon, is one of the biggest problems that no one talks about is there's now no late night public transport back to places like Newcastle, the Northern Beaches, the Shire. And so when I first started DJing in like the early 2000s, when you came to a club in King's Cross or the city, like 77 or whatever, there would be people from all over the place and they would come in and party every week because you could easily get home. There were like night buses that went till like 6 a.m. You know, the train would start. I don't think the train stopped, you know, so even like, because we used to come down to go to Bang Gang in the early 2000s and we would like literally come down after work, have a couple of drinks with friends who lived in Sydney, you know, pre-drink, whatever. We'd go to the club and then at like 3 or 4, if we felt like, you know, even if we felt shit at 2 or didn't get in or something happened and you wanted to go home early, you didn't really have to wait too long before you could get on the public transport and go home cheaply. And I feel like now it's like, if, you know, in that post-lockout world, if you don't get a taxi that's really expensive or an Uber or whatever, they're all really expensive now, you would be like, you know, you're stuck and no one wants to take that risk. And going out is already so expensive. If the government really wants to like save nightlife and do all that kind of shit, if they were really serious about it, 24-hour public transport is the thing that they need to do to bring people from like, because I used to do it. I used to like come down, go out on a Friday night, and I would get the train back at like 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I would get to work by like 9, 10 a.m., you know, and go to work, and it was fine. Yeah. Like, I mean, at the time I was like self-employed. I had a little record store in Newcastle, so I didn't really, you know, I could be a little bit hungover or whatever. But
responsibility, not much.
Yeah, but like, I feel like that's the one thing that really prevents a lot more people from coming into the city. And I reckon if they did that, they would find that, you know, I reckon they'd almost double the amount of people in clubs, and you just wouldn't, like, I remember in the sort of 2000 to probably 2007 period when I first started DJing more in Sydney and going out in Sydney, like there was like, you know, a lot of the clubs were pretty full most of the time, and like there was just enough people to be out. And this is obviously when there was like 4 to 5 times as many clubs as they are now, because before COVID, before the lockout laws, when everything shut, and there was just like so many people on the street. Like even the busiest time, like when you go to Oxford Street at Mardi Gras, that was like Oxford Street at Mardi Gras now, which is probably the busiest time for Oxford Street, is like a quiet Saturday night before the lockout laws.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
And yeah, Mardi Gras is a mass. I feel like even now it's sort of, from what I've seen, it's not as big of a, not, I think spectacle's the wrong word, but just crowd wise, like pre-COVID as well. I remember Mardi Gras, when you see it on the screen, it'd be like this absolute chaos, like this people just everywhere. Whereas now it feels a little bit more controlled, maybe because there's not enough people going out. But
I think it's kind of like, look, to be honest, on the other side of the coin, I don't like it when there's too many people. I don't really like packed clubs. They're kind of annoying. Obviously, you never want the club to be dead, but like 75% full is like really nice. You don't want to be tripping over people. Like, it's nice for people to have a little bit of personal space. It's sure, if you want to get up the front and you want to get sweaty, it's great to be able to do that, but it's also nice, I think, you know, for people to be able to like step back and take a breath and talk to their friend, but still the music be loud and, you know, still feel like they're a part of something. I think that's like the best, like that's kind of like, for me, that's the best possible scenario. Like I don't want to sell heaps of, I'd rather make less money like running a party and have everyone feel comfortable, and rather than sardine people in And, you know, because the problem is too, if you have the headliner in a smaller room or whatever, sometimes people don't even get to see the headliner. Like, I've paid good money for parties where I didn't even get to, you know.
Why is that?
Well, just because the room fills up and you can't even get into the room. Or if you can get into the room, it's so chockers that you can't, like, really move around and enjoy yourself. You got to wait 20 minutes for a drink, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, you know.
That's a good point, because the amount of times, like, when you're at a party or like a venue or an event, you step back to like have a breather, you feel like you're missing out.
Yeah.
Like, you're so far back from everything that, like, the music feels like it's a bit distant, and, like, everyone else, the crowd's there and you're here. Whereas, as you said, if it's like 75% full, you can afford to sort of just step back even like 2 steps, but still feel like you're in the party.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like also club design and like party speaker layout. One thing that Berlin does really well, better than Sydney, is they will have, or you know, places overseas, not necessarily just Berlin, but the sound system will be placed, you know, there'll be speakers around the club, not just at the front facing out at you. Like, one of the things I really like about 77 is they have speakers at other places in the club. So it's great because it means that you can stand up the back, but the music's still sort of a little bit louder. You still feel like you're part of something, because having speakers at the back also invites people into the club. If you walk into a club and you can see that there's a DJ playing and it's really loud down one end, but you walk in and it's kind of quiet at your end, it's sort of like, what is this?
Where do I go?
Yeah, because if you're playing club music and you're in a nightclub, it's kind of got to be at a certain volume. Like, obviously you don't want it to be too loud. You don't want to ruin people's hearing, but like, you also want to have it at a volume where people go, oh, this is a fucking thing. This is a party. It's going to happen. If it's too quiet, you know, when people walk in the door, they're like, is this just like, what is this? You know, even though to us, it's obvious what it is or whatever, but you know, sometimes people will just get the impression that it's going to be, that it might be a quieter night or, you know, something like that. And I think, like, you know, in Sydney, where we only get to go out for 6 hours, people kind of, I've noticed with 77 when I play, like, people come in at 9 p.m. and they kind of want to dance. And if I play dancey true, like if I play a little bit up and I can make them start dancing before 10, you know, start filling up a dance floor.
I think that's important as well, because I think with Sydney, everyone sort of wants to go out a bit later.
Yeah.
And as you said, we've only got like 6 hours to really like go to party.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's a bit of a situation where people want to go out early, but they also want to not go out early because nothing's busy.
Yeah.
At like 9 or 10. So it's like, why would you go to a club and be the only person there?
Totally.
And then again, spend money on drinks that you could probably spend, you know, buying some cheap beers or whatever it may be. Yeah. But I think that's like, I don't know. I think it's cool when you walk into a club and it's quiet and the music progressively gets louder and like, you know, you're walking into a club.
Yeah. Like I don't think I wouldn't say I want it to be like massively loud at the start. Like, obviously there's a certain volume where it's like silly, you know, if it's super loud and you walk in and there's no one there, it's going to sound silly. But on the flip side of the coin, if you walk in and it's too quiet, you're almost like, what is this?
I've had it before. When you walk into clubs, there's no music at all.
Yeah.
All you hear is like the bass.
Yeah.
And it just feels, I find that cool, because it's like you're walking in and you're like feeling the bass. It's like you're walking into the club and it's like everything opens up.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
It just depends.
Berghain is a lot like that. If you're like, when you walk in the front, until you get up into the actual like Berghain club room, you're just like in these hallways. There's the cloakroom and the stairs and all this shit, and all you can hear is this, and you're like, holy shit, what is gonna happen when I get up to the top of that dark staircase? You know. Yeah.
Wait, when did you go to Berghain? When were you there?
I've been a few times. The first time I went, I was a bit of a probably late bloomer with it. It was in about 2016 or something, and then would have been 2015, and then I went back in 2017 or 18. 20, would have been 2015, and then I went back in 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 18. Oh yeah, I probably a couple of times in between that. But 2018 was the last time I went. Yeah, so I'm going over like next week. A friend of mine's playing in Panorama Bar, and I'm gonna.
Oh, in Berghain.
Yeah, or in the Panorama Bar is the bar above it. But it's in the same building, so it's
same entrance protocols.
Yes, same entrance, and then you like Panorama Bar is a little bit more housey and disco-y at the top.
But do you still have to go through the same?
Yeah, you still
entrance?
have to line up. You still got to get you got to get past Sven.
Is that that's
the
security
bouncer?
guard?
Yeah, the famous bouncer. But,
well, maybe not expose them on here, but what's the tips into getting into Berghain? But like, because your friend's playing though, would that mean that you sort of do you have any guest list
I've never I don't even know. I don't think I've been on the guest list before. I've just gone and got in. I think I was on the guest list maybe once the last time I went, but I think this is a real shit thing to say, but like you just have to look like you've been in there and you know what it's like.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Like probably I wouldn't wear a jumper and long pants or like things like that. Like it's hot in there. You're gonna be there for ages. You kind of want to be. I mean, you want to look good, but you want to be kind of comfortable. You probably want to wear comfortable footwear that you can dance for 20 hours in. Like, it's the kind of place where you could lose 10 to 20 hours without even thinking about it. And so I feel like, that kind of thing really helps. And just to have a, friendly attitude, speak a little bit of German.
Do you speak a little bit of German? Enough to be
I know, I can, they ask you how many people there are, so I can count to 5, that kind of thing. I could say please and thank you, all that kind of shit. So that kind of thing helps. Like, I don't know. They're definitely like watching you for quite a while before you get to the front of the line.
So you've got to be on your A game as soon as you get into line, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've lined up for 3 hours with people around me telling me, "You're not going to get in, man. What are you even doing?" And then got to the front of the line and they got turned away and I got let in. So, I mean, I don't know, but maybe I also probably have the luck of, or not the luck, but being a little bit older, they're like, people like. You're less likely to be a troublemaker, I guess, or something like that. Like people, that's one advantage of being older when you go to clubs. There's definitely disadvantages to it as well, but I've been called dad and shit in a club.
At least you get into Berghain, so
yeah, totally. Who gets the last laugh, right?
not the people that got turned away.
Yeah,
but like have you played in Berlin?
Yeah, I played a couple of times.
Are you playing this time they're going around, or are you just going there purely just to see a mate?
Just a pure fun trip.
Reckless trip.
Yeah.
How was it like? When did you play in Berlin?
I played in those 2 trips. So it would have been 2016. It might have been 2015, 2017, or 2016, 2018. There was about a 2-year gap in between. It was fun. I played at a place called Wilde Renata, which is like it's kind of like what would you say, like an apartment building that they've turned into a club, and it's a bit like, it's fun. It's got a nice courtyard out the front that's kind of a bit like, you can sit outside and kind of convalesce, and then there's like club rooms inside. There's 3 or 4. There's 2 bigger rooms, and then there's like little, sort of weird rooms that hold there's 2 rooms probably that hold 100 to 200 people in each room, and then there's a couple of little rooms that sort of have like 30 to 50.
Oh wow! So it's like it's got multiple
yeah
rooms,
and it goes from it's sort of like one of those ones that goes from midnight to midday. So. But that, people also, there's a lot of people that just want to hang out in the garden out the front and smoke, and, there's like a real, over there, they definitely think about the different zones that people want to hang out in. A lot of those clubs like Berghain has it, About Blank has it, Wilder and Ada, they all have, you know, places where you can be outside and have a ciggy and it's fine kind of thing. Whereas I feel like one of the problems we have in Sydney, right, is everyone's like, you got to stay inside. And, you know, you have these tiny little smoking areas where you have to like charge your ciggy real quick and get back in there, and everyone's sort of...
Yeah, I feel like since COVID though, again, going back to that, I feel like I have not seen like a proper smokers area since, like, maybe it's just me because I'm not in those areas anymore. Not that I smoke, but just like I used to hang out a lot in those areas as anyone would.
Yeah, you want to go have a chat with some friends, right? I'm the same. I don't smoke, but I definitely find myself in a smoking area more than
I think maybe now because of maybe now because of vapes as well. People are more, because you can smoke in clubs now, like with the vapes. So there's no really
not legally, but
not all of, and not all of them as well. But like you can do it in clubs. So I think people have sort of like that I guess has gone because people are now smoking vapes instead of cigarettes, where you have to actually be in a separate location.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It definitely smells better.
Yeah, I mean, better smelling. What's it called? Like grape rather than cigarettes.
Pineapple ice.
How like obviously you've been in. How long have you been sort of within the Sydney scene? 20, like you've been since 2005, 2006.
Yeah, so I originally started off in Newcastle, and I was DJing at bars and parties there. Like, it's funny, like when I first started, there was probably only like 6 or 7 DJs playing gigs in Newcastle, and there was like a couple of different bars, and you know, I mean, there was also like people who threw dwarfs and raves and stuff like that. But when I started, I didn't really know anyone else that was a DJ. I just had kind of got into it because I had a record collection and I had turntables, and I started to like get gigs just playing before and after friends' bands and stuff. And then I like sort of started working at a record shop I hung out with and started a DJ in bars and stuff. But yeah, like it was a very different world where it was kind of like the bar to entry was pretty high because you had to have a record collection and you had to have turntables, and I had to take my turntables to every gig. Like my dad would like drive me in the car with crates of records and turntables and stuff. And then we started to do parties because we wanted to play, like I was at the time was really into like breakbeat music. That was quite popular in the early 2000s. And so I could kind of play that in the little bars and clubs that I played in, but sometimes the managers really wanted me to play house music all the time. Funky house was kind of like what we were supposed to play, or hip hop.
Yeah, like they were,
yeah, they were the two. Like you would either get the hip hop funk gig or the funky house gig, and we would like slip in as much naughty shit that they didn't want us to play. I mean, I'm always trying to slip in naughty shit that no one wants me to play, but I think I learned it from starting off back then. So then we started doing parties because we were like, then we can just play whatever the fuck music we want and have it on a really good sound system. And luckily it worked out for us. And so we did that for like 5 or 6 years, but then we started to book international DJs. So people in Sydney started to book us.
Oh, wow.
And then, so that's kind of how I probably played my first gig in Sydney around 2005, 2006, but it was like to 1,000 people at the Metro because we'd already created this thing in Newcastle and so many people knew about us. We had people from Sydney coming, buying tickets to our parties and coming and partying in Newcastle. In this,
what was it called?
We did a party called Nutshell Breaks, and it was at a pub, the Cambridge Hotel in Newcastle, which only just shut down about a year ago.
Right.
But that's sort of like how we started. And we would book like, you know, years ago we used to book Stanton Warriors, Plump DJs, all these kind of Kid Kenobi, lots of like, yeah, more breakbeaty kind of stuff, a little bit of jungle and things like that. Yeah, so that was kind of, that really like got me started like running parties and sort of appreciating like raving a bit more and like bigger parties with bigger sound systems. Like there wasn't even that many festivals back then. Like, I mean, we used to go to stuff like the Big Day Out, and they'd have like Boiler Room, you know, which was a totally different thing to what Boiler Room is today.
Oh, so it wasn't like an actual branded Boiler Room. It was like
No, that was called, the Australian room of the Big Day Out was called Boiler Room, and then after the Big Day Out shut, a few years later, the Boiler Room thing happened in the UK, and it's completely different. It was just like the name of the, yeah.
So Boiler Room wasn't actually made in the UK. It was at the Big Day Out.
Yeah, but I mean, they weren't filming it, so it was a very different. It was just the name of the room at the Big Day Out that they put dance music in. You know, they actually had another one called Hot House. So the Hot House was like the small dance music stage, and the Boiler Room was the big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So then,
but they had like Fatboy Slim, Ronnie Size, Miss Kitten, Aphex Twin, Luke Vibert. Like they had like legit proper, you know, all the big dance music performers from around the world played it. And so I think for me, like I was also into bands and rap music and stuff as well. So that was what would have got me more into dance music.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then what, you moved to Sydney shortly after your first couple of gigs, right? You moved in like 2006, like
2006, 2007. It was probably about a 2-year period. I had a record store in Newcastle, and I was you know, one of the lucky or people that opened a record store right when people really started to use CDJs. So everyone started to like illegally download music and burn CDs, and I used to have people come into my record store and like write down the names of all the records and then go home and
download them.
So as my business was going under, I was getting booked more and more to play in Sydney. So that's when I moved down.
Right. So how was it like? Obviously, if anyone knows Barney, knows that he's got a crazy record collection. What is it, 4,000 plus?
Maybe more, yeah.
More now, yeah. From what I've read, it's 4,000 plus, but
yeah.
It could be
That's
more.
That's probably what's written in the bio. There's about 4,000 that are for DJing.
Oh, for DJing. Okay.
Like 12 inches.
Right.
There are lots of albums that are like just I'd listen to at home, you know, Led Zeppelin or Beastie Boys or ambient music or something.
So you got 4,000 DJ ready records, but you probably got God knows how many.
I've got probably another 2,000 or 3,000 at home that are just
listening, casual listening
to. Yeah.
Well, how was it like running a record store back in those days? Obviously, there was.
It was at that time there was still like a lot of importers from other countries. So you would, rather than import records from all around the world, there'd be an importer in Melbourne, and you would just. And there was a couple in Sydney. There was Creative Vibes in Sydney, Stomp in Melbourne, Central Station, and a few others. And so the records were like bulk imported to Australia, and then you'd be able to buy them a little bit cheaper. Or, I mean, they'd put a profit on. But, yeah, so it was actually a little bit easier. Like now I work in a record store now, and we import all our records from different distributors overseas. So and that's to save money because the cost of shipping and all that shit now is insane. And
more than
the price of records is it's almost more like for a person to order one record off Discogs, it's definitely more than the record itself. But even for us, it's getting close. It's sort of like just getting above half of cost price.
Records are still very hard to come by nowadays. Not come by, but just as in they're a lot more expensive.
Yeah, they're a lot more expensive. I mean, I guess you can, you know, a lot of people are like very into collecting secondhand records now, which is it's a great way of like getting records at a bit more of an affordable price sometimes. But I mean, even that can get pretty expensive after a while. It's can turn into a bit of an addiction, I think, for a lot of people.
Do you think you fall into that category?
I think at times I have been. Like I'm a collector of things. You know, if I wasn't collecting records, I'd be collecting something else. I'm collecting, you know, like I collect old Star Wars toys and, you know, fucking Magic the Gathering cards and all kinds of shit. So, like, I'm always bringing something home.
Yeah, because... Yeah, obviously, like how long have you been collecting records? And like, how long have you been collecting your DJ ready records for?
Sort of. Well, I started DJing in 2000, and I probably was buying DJ records before then. Like, there's definitely records that I still play that I would have bought in the late 90s when I was a teenager so when I first started buying records, this is pretty interesting probably for a lot of people. There wasn't the internet really. The internet was typing text. And so the most you could find out about a record on the internet was the name of the record and maybe the track listing and shit like that. And I used to like read reviews in magazines and be like, oh, that's really interesting. And also, it wasn't like you could just walk into a record store and listen to a record. Like, some record stores would have like hell staunch staff, and you would have to like get to know them before they would let you listen to a record. At the very least, like, you know, if you went to like a chain store that let you listen to records, you had to leave your ID to get a needle for the turntable, you know, so that you wouldn't just nick off with the ID or like steal the records. I mean, people used to steal the records anyway, but like, it was like intimidating to go into a record store when I first started buying records. And you know, like, you oftentimes would, if you couldn't listen to a record, you just like blind buy something. I'd be like, oh, I read an interview with the Beastie Boys and they said they liked Goldie, so I bought a Goldie record, but I didn't really know if it was good or not or if I'd like it, but the Beastie Boys liked it, and, you know, something like that. So I would just buy it, and usually that would be pretty good. Not always, you know. I definitely every now and then got a bad recommendation from the Beastie Boys.
How has the process of record collection changed? The obvious one being the internet and the digital age.
Yeah, you can just buy a record online. I think that I don't think like a huge amount of it's changed, but I think that's the one big thing that changed it. I think that changed so many hobbies where people collect things, you know, to be connected with everyone else in the world. Like, I used to think, oh, I'll never be able to get that record because, you know, I couldn't find it in a store in Sydney, you know. And I mean, there was, you know, it slowly changed. There was like, we used to, like, in the early 2000s, we found this, there was a website called Hard to Find Records in the UK, which I think still exists. And that was one of the first websites where it was like, oh, we could order records on the internet. This is crazy. And you still couldn't listen to them, but you could like read a review or hear it on a CD or work out some way of getting to know that was the record you wanted. And so you would just like, yeah, buy them, get them, you know, the same sort of shit. But it was like, they would send, and when you bought records off them, they would send you like a catalog, like a magazine with a list of all the records that they had in stock and stuff like that. And you could kind of like order out of the magazine back. So it was very like lo-fi or whatever you would say. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Primitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's ahead of its time though, the whole website and buying off a catalog and stuff like that. Because as you said, sometimes you couldn't even find the record and then that's it. Like, you can't really do much about it.
But eventually we found the record stores in Sydney, and, you know, if you go there enough, and it was kind of like you had to get to a point where the staff kind of, you know, knew you well enough that they'd be like, all right, here, have the good records. So, you know, that was cool. It was a weird kind of thing, but like, I don't know. It kind of made you a bit more sort of picky about what you buy, things like that. Although sometimes I definitely felt guilted into buying a record just because I wanted to, like, the next time I came back, I didn't want them to think that I was a time waster or something. So, I mean, I probably bought a couple of turkeys.
That's all right. Part of the collection now.
Yeah.
How has record collecting changed for you now? Because, like, do you still prefer to go digging, or are you more of like an online shopper now when it comes to records?
I went through, so I'm a digger. I like to go digging. Although I don't do it so much now because I work in a record store. and I also have a really big record collection already. Like I rent a separate like studio space that I don't really make music in. I make music in another studio space, but I rent one just for the records.
And you have like a setup there as well, so you can play and everything. Or
yeah, I have all the decks and everything set up, and I can play it loud and that kind of stuff. So it's great. It's expensive, but it's great. And so I mean, a big piece of advice that I always give people is the best place to go digging for records is your own record collection. Like, yeah, you always find something. There's always, like, every time I go through my records and listen to a pile of shit that I don't know what it is, I'm like, oh fuck, that's sick. You know, and then I'll like put a little sticker on it and write a little note to myself to remember that it sounds like this and I should really play it. You know, I'll be like, play this one. So that kind of thing. I think it's like, you know, you can spend a lot of time listening to thousands of records, you know, to find like one or two needles in the haystack. But it's always good to remember that you've already got a big pile of needles sitting back at your house. And so, you know, if you've got a gig coming up, just go through don't spend hours stressing out in a record store. Just go to your own record. My boss is going to kill me for this. No, I mean, look, you definitely can find good records digging in a record store as well. You know, if you treat the records nicely and you're really nice to the staff and stuff like that, you know, they're more likely to show you pretty good records, which is a good tip.
So it's still a little bit old school in that sense, where the staff are sort of your gateway to.
Yeah, but we try to not gatekeep. Like we're pretty, you know, we have like sort of rules that we don't, you know, we let stuff go out into the store before we like, you know, pick it and whatever. Like I find a lot of good records that like sometimes if someone's been listening to a pile of records in the store and I have to put them back, I will listen to the ones that they listen to and be like, oh, that's good, I'll buy that one. So sometimes I'm buying people's rejects, you know.
One man's trash, another man's treasure, you know.
Totally.
And then sort of, how has, like, did you start, you were just DJing on records on vinyl for a long time.
Yeah.
When did you sort of transfer over to CDJs as soon as they sort of became a thing, or were you sort of still on vinyl and then you made that transition?
It was about, you know how I said before when I had a record store and everyone started to play digital stuff, I started at the same time. I was like, all right, well, I'm not making heaps of money in my record store anymore. I'm going to have to shut it down. So I'm going to start downloading music too, you know.
You can't beat him, join him.
Exactly. So I that was around like 2006, 2007. And so, yeah, I think it's really important to move with the times with this stuff. Like, in the end, like it or not, it's a technology-based, you know, it's a technology-based world, the world of DJing. I don't like to say the industry or whatever because I don't like to think about it like that. The universe of DJing. And so you do need to be up with the technology. I think it's a mistake to be like vinyl only, or, you know, I don't think people should be elitist about this thing. You know, if you're a good DJ, to me, it doesn't matter what equipment you use. But if you want to be a successful DJ, you want to play a lot, you need to be prepared to do whatever it takes. You know, like, sure, there's definitely people who are like vinyl only till I die and they become successful, but that's like, again, going back to the needle in a haystack analogy, you know. You have to be very lucky. I've seen a lot of DJs who are vinyl only and they play and the needles are skipping and they don't know how to fix that problem, or maybe the problem's just unfixable, you know. And sometimes you like, is your pride worth a bad experience for people on a dance floor? You know what I mean? Like, I would rather give people the best experience that I can possibly deliver than, be sort of committed to one way or another of doing things. Like if like there's been so many gigs where I've planned a bunch of really great records to play on vinyl, and the equipment, in spite of me trying to troubleshoot it on the fly, if it's not agreeing with it, I've made the change halfway through a set or a quarter of the way through a set.
Gone from vinyl to CDJ.
Digital, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, look, I mean, that's not the hardest thing in the world. It sounds harder than it is probably. But, I mean, I find myself, I'm not very good at playing with both. If I'm going to play vinyl, I like to play all vinyl. If I'm going to play digital, I like to play all digital. When I start mixing it up, I kind of make mistakes.
I mean, yeah, naturally though. You can imagine going from...
It's like controlling two things as opposed to controlling four things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the sets though, actually, I was reading up on that you sort of mentioned how you've sort of had to change last minute and be adaptable was your Boiler Room set that you played a while back, where you literally were planning to do it as like they were in the works of making it a full vinyl set.
Yeah.
But there was problems with the sound system, and then
yeah. So Boiler Room, because they have people dancing around behind you and stuff like that, it's really hard for vinyl. You're at the mercy of random people bumping you. So the stage, I played the Boiler Room at the Horden Pavilion. That stage is kind of hollow underneath, and so we did a sound check on the day. I'd planned to be able to play digital or records. I took records on the day. We got 10 people to sort of stand around me and like dance and stomp, and the needles were just skipping like crazy.
Oh shit.
So
you can imagine what it'd be like with the full crowd there.
Yeah.
Like literally not even.
Yeah. And people like no one's aware of that, So yeah, that was never going to work. So like I just switched to digital. I had sort of planned different like ideas of what I was going to do, whether I played vinyl or digital. When we switched to digital, I sound checked my USB in one CDJ. When we did the sound check, it worked fine. I put it in a different CDJ when I actually started to play the set, and it didn't read the record box data on my
God.
USB stick. So I couldn't like search a track or like all my playlists were gone. I didn't have anything. So I just kind of had to like make it up on the fly. If you watch the footage, there's a bit where Ibatonia announces me and you can see me and I'm still like flicking through my, trying to find like a first track to play, or I found the first track that I was going to play. And I kind of like look over at her and go, can you talk for a little bit like
Oh, really?
Anyway, yeah, you can kind of see it. And so my Boiler Room is actually, if you want to watch someone sort of troubleshooting problems with equipment in real time.
I did read that then your USBs didn't work on the actual CDJ.
Yeah, so the USB didn't work on the CDJ, but then when I remembered sort of halfway through that it worked on the other one, and I played like songs off 4 different CDJs so I could switch it back to the other one, and then it worked in the other one. So I played the rest of the set a little bit more like as I intended it to go, which was fine. But also, as well as all of that, when they did a switch over of the mixer between DJs and the fallback speakers weren't plugged it back into the mixer, so I played my first 20 minutes without fallback speakers, and you can see footage of me like waving at the sound guy, like yelling like, come over here, can we fix this?
Are the fallback speakers the ones that are on the ones side?
The monitor, so on the set, so they're the ones where you can sort of, you need those to just be able to hear it well enough to mix. Otherwise you like I just noticed like about 20 minutes in, I was like, far out, I'm finding it really hard to mix today. And then I was like, listen to one speaker, I'll listen to the other speaker, and I'm like, oh shit,
they're not working.
They're not plugged in. But because I was so like running on the adrenaline of all the other shit that I was trying to like sort out, I didn't notice that.
Oh my God.
But then, yeah, so like halfway through, I felt like I was like getting into it and stuff. But yeah, it was definitely like I was a lot more stressed than I would have expected. But I'm still happy with it. Like, I don't think it was, it's not terrible. I had fun. There was just a lot of like stress and adrenaline.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I was reading up on that. Everything that could have went wrong sort of did go wrong in a sense, but you seem to have saved it very well.
I think that's the thing about, having done it for 20 years, I was able to like, just kind of put myself into a different mindset and be like, how do I handle these problems? And it's something you really need to learn to do, to be able to, adapt to these situations on the fly. DJing is like, it's a weird thing where it's like not the hardest job ever, but it also, to do it really well and to be, professional at it and make sure that at the end of the day, people walk away having a good time and, everyone's happy. That is like a little bit harder than just getting on a stage and mixing two tracks together. And I think like, look, you can get pretty successful by just getting on a stage and mixing tracks together, and that's fine. I'm not like, one thing is I don't really care about what other people do. Like, I find it, I don't try to compare myself to other people. If I do, I just don't think it's like productive. So I want to be the best Barney Kato I can be, and not worry about, what other people are doing or what music other people play. Like, I love to go watch DJs. I love to like, sometimes I'll find out a track that someone plays, or I'm not really a track ID person, but like, if I see,
Shazam.
yeah. But if I see, I'll do the research. I'll be like, like I'll listen to a bunch of their mixes afterwards and things like that. And, I definitely am always like on the lookout for tracks, but, yeah, like I like, so to try like that kind of, it's what keeps me going doing it. And I want to be unique. I don't want to be playing the same music that everyone else plays. Obviously, like, I want people to be able to feel like they can relate to my music in some way. So like I try to like listen to all of the people that are big, and I'm like, like you were saying X Club before, it's not my thing, but I know that everyone likes it, right? So I'll listen to like every X Club track and find the one or two that I'm like, oh, sick, that's cool. That's something I can work with. And it's a good thing for me because it means that if I play that, then I can play something else, and people alongside it, and people go, oh shit, all right, that's a track I like, and that's a, something that I've never heard before, but like that also sounds pretty mad as well, so it's kind of, creating you can kind of like reach out to people and then use that to kind of bend them to your will later.
Best manipulate people into liking your other stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good point. Like, it's a cool way to sort of look at it. No, it's all good. Yeah, it's a good way to look at it in the sense that, yeah, using sort of a mainstream track here and there to then sort of couple it with, sort of something a bit more unique or something a bit. Yeah, I think unique's a good word to put it. So,
and sometimes it's even like a fragment of a mainstream track, like an a cappella, or just fading in a little bit of something or whatever. And like, look, I'll never play things I don't like. I'm not gonna like, play something just because it's popular. I like one thing that maybe I get a bit music wanker about is that like, I'm not going to play those fucking meme tracks. Like, I'm not going to play a TikTok banger or like, I'm not going to play Darude Sandstorm just because I know everyone I don't want to take the easy win, if I'm going to, I want to try and like make people go nuts by playing things that are like weird curveballs and shit like that, where people go, whoa, I've never heard that before, but that's wild. Yeah. Like I'd rather that kind of that. I'd rather, you know, you can play all of the easy wins in a row, and you can like walk away and be like, yeah, I did a good job, whatever. But it doesn't feel like I like won or, you know, solved the puzzle or something like that. Whereas like I like the idea of like, you know, like I often play to like crowds of people that are like half my age, you know, like at Lost Sundays or whatever. Like, you know, I'm playing to like definitely notice when I'm in there that I'm like a bit older than most of the people there, you know, and people kind of look at me and they're like, who's this old guy? Like, whatever.
Dropping bangers though.
You know, and well, before I play, it's even weirder, right? They haven't seen me before. I don't know who I am. I'm just kind of like, you know, some dude up the back drinking a beer, like, what's going on here? But, you know, like, and then once they see me, they're like, oh, shit, all right. You know, I mean, hopefully they're like, oh, shit, all right. But, yeah.
Well, yeah, like I said, I was talking to you before, like, the sort of distinct memory I have of you is that Lost Sunday said we just dropped the X Club song out of nowhere. But then, like, even your Boiler Room as well was very, like, it's very, again, it's a unique sound.
Yeah.
It's, like, very, like, I don't even know how I would describe it. How would you describe the sort of music that you play?
I would say, like, I actually try to explain this to people. Like, when I say, like, I'm like the outskirts of house and techno and breakbeat and stuff, but I like to be the thing, but also not be the thing, if that makes sense as well. Like, I also love electro music, but again, I'm probably not like I run an electro party, but I wouldn't say that I'm an electro DJ because I like to be pretty open format. Like I like to play lots of different music. I listen to lots of different music. Like, you know, I like if friends tell me they like enjoy psytrance, I like listen to psytrance, bought a heap of psytrance, and now I like mix that with techno and stuff when I play. Like I just like if I think something's exciting, then I start playing it, and I work out a way of integrating it into all of that. Oh, so it's kind of like, I guess I would say like I'm like outside of dance music, where like anything that you can dance to, I like to kind of find like my version of it or per version of it or something like that. Like, you know, like, and yeah, bend it to my will and twist it into something that I can make work. But I'm not genre specific or BPM specific, although usually I mean I'm usually 130 to 140 BPM kind of thing. But yeah, I like to, you know, just try and play a lot of different stuff. And, you know, I mean, and there's definitely, you know, types of music that I collect that I don't get to DJ much that I'd love to DJ more. You know, I don't get to play much jungle or drum and bass, but it's so hard to play so many different things and also make it cohesive. And I'm also like quite a big believer of, you know, trying to ride the energy of the crowd and like work out where they're at energy wise and like sort of sweep them up in whatever I'm doing. So like, but also like, you know, I find that I'm better at controlling the energy of 130 to 140 BPM. That's where I like know I can go outside of that, you know, for like an hour or 2 hours or a set or something like that. But yeah, if I'm going to be so genre wide, there has to be something that I'm specific about. So I guess I'm a little bit more like specific about BPM because within that BPM range, I'm going to play a whole bunch of different shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, then it's like, you know, things like how many breakdowns do I play in an hour? You know, like, do people need a breakdown now? Or like one thing that I find DJs get trapped in is just, if you're just mixing the intro into the outro of the track, there's lots of breakdowns and you kind of like lose a bit of energy on a breakdown unless you've really been slamming it for ages and then people are like, fuck, I need a breakdown, or something
yeah.
like that, you know. So and breakdowns in techno have a very different meaning to a breakdown in a breakbeat track or a UKG track or a dubstep track, you know. All of those kind of breakdowns, and they build back up in different ways, or they just work in very different ways. So like, you know, sometimes I'm thinking about which kind of, like, you know, how do I want to steer that, and where do I want to be in 3 or 4 tracks time, and all this kind of stuff. So
3 or 4 tracks time is crazy to think ahead.
I like it though, because it's kind of like, I feel like I'm a space pilot or a mad scientist trying to like solve the equation, or, you know, fly the spaceship or something like that, you know. And I like, you know, that's kind of the fun of it to me, I guess, is like, you know, yeah, like it's cool to feel like you have that much control over a bunch of people, you know. And then but there's also a responsibility with that, I guess.
For sure. Very very dynamic.
Yeah,
very dynamic with like your sound and stuff. How has it developed? Have you always had that mentality, or that sort of mentality came around in the last however long?
I think I've always had it. Like there's been times when I've tried to like play more like minimalistic or stick to one genre, and it's that's a good learning experience for me, but I don't really feel like if I come to it in the end, I'm like, that's just not me. I can't do the slow. I mean, I can do it, but like, I don't naturally stick to I'm not naturally good at sticking to like one, like, you know, one thing and just jamming at home.
Yeah.
And so I guess like I just work with what works for me, you know. There's definitely different environments where like, if I'm playing, I'm going to play very different music at Lost Sundays, whereas if I'm playing 2 till 4 a.m. on a Sunday night at 77, that's when I'll kind of like lock into a groove more, you know, and just like, you know, maybe the music will change a bit less than what I would normally do. But then if I'm playing a headline slot, you know, and people are watching and stuff like that, you know, like it's like chockers and people are ready to go, then I sort of tend to go in that more direction where I'm like mixing it up and, you know, a bit more energetic and stuff like that. So it really just depends. Like I do appreciate both kind of ways of DJing, and I like to like use that when it's going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Has the crowd changed over time, like since you've started DJing? Because obviously I feel like you've been very adaptive.
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing.
I try to like just listen to what people like, I like to know what people like. I you know, I'll listen to the, you know, if I hear everyone's going to a party with such and such playing or whatever, I'll listen to what they play, and I'll understand why, even if it's not music I like to like know. So like, you know, at the moment everyone seems to like faster BPMs, so, you know, I take that on board. I'm definitely playing faster than I was before COVID or something like that. In general, like the general like lower BPM is raised. You know, sometimes I used to be like 120 to 130, and now I'm like 130 to 140. You know,
will you ever go to 140 to 150? Or no?
Yeah, I can do it. I just and I like doing it. You know, I'll play whatever the DJ before me is playing. I'll just take off from wherever they go.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like, you know, I mean, like, look, sometimes if I think that the crowd would prefer like a different BPM, then sometimes I'll change the BPM. But I'm not like, when people like often ask me, oh, what do you want me to play before you, or where do you want me to leave it? I'm like, do your best. I don't care. Because yeah, I know I can like make it work, whatever happens. And that's kind of like the fun of it for me as well. Like I was saying before, the puzzle I get to, you know, Yeah. Play the game, solve it. Yeah.
Think three or four tracks ahead.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. How about like your production on the production side of things? How sort of what's going on there?
I've been producing for like probably about 10 or so years. I'm not a technical wizard with the equipment. I know how to use Ableton and shit like that. But like I'm more of a, hey, how about we sample this, or let's do something with this synthesizer sound. I'm learning how to like tweak the analog synths and all that kind of stuff, which is fun. But usually I work with someone else who's a bit more of a tech wizard. So at the moment I'm working with Ash Tunnel Signs, and we do a project called Barney in the Tunnel. We've done a couple of releases. We had a pretty successful release overseas, but it was during COVID. So all these people played it and said they liked it. Like we had like Skateboard and Gerd Jansen and got all this really good feedback. Track got on an ad for Pandora jewelry, and we made like a few thousand euros each and shit like that. But COVID just wasn't a productive time for us. And we never had the right mix of music to capitalize on that successful release. And so when we came out of COVID, it was almost like starting at square one. And we were like, well, if we're starting at square one, is what we did in the past really like what we still like? And I like to be able to DJ the tracks that I make. But I also, on the other side, I can't make tracks that sound like the tracks that I would already play when I'm DJing, because I'm like, oh, that fucking sounds like something. It sounds like something I know. And then to me, that's not cool. I don't really want to make music that sounds like other people's music. Not that I'm not saying that the music that we do make is like the most fucking original music ever, but yeah, like I find it really hard to use like just breakbeat samples and things like that. If I put them in a track, I can't get with it. Unfortunately, I go, oh, it just sounds like this track or that track.
So you're trying to be a bit more original in that. Like...
Yeah, try and like use less samples, more like, like definitely we do still sample stuff, but try and build stuff from the ground up a bit more. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's look, like production, I find heaps harder because there is that kind of, you're also, you're thinking about a lot of other things. Maybe I need to get out of my head a bit more when I'm in the studio or something like that. But yeah, like we often make tracks and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I even like that.
It's always the case. I feel like I've heard that some Sony producers where they make a track and they're just like, yeah, nah, let's scrap that. Start again. So,
I think it's good to just like, I think there's definitely something said for just putting shit out there and getting it done. And look, I look up to those people that can put out heaps of tracks and stuff like that. Like, I definitely want to work towards that. This year we've got a Barney in the Tunnel release coming out on Gallery pretty soon. So
oh, nice.
Yeah,
when's
that should be pretty good in the next couple of months.
Oh, sick. How many, is that like an EP or just a track?
It's one track and a remix, I think. Like two different versions of the one track.
What sort of sound is it? Is it more like what you used to make, or is it?
No, it's a bit faster. Well, it's kind of, I guess, like in the world between house and techno. A bit more on the techno-y thing, and I did a vocal on it, which is pretty funny.
Is it like a loop?
No, it's me just talking.
Oh, just talking in it.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I've always been pretty fascinated with producers putting their own sort of vocals behind their tracks, and like not even singing, but just like speaking or.
Yeah, well, we just kind of did it as a laugh, and then I started playing it in clubs, and people are like, "Oh, that's pretty sick." And it's like sometimes it's the biggest track that I play. You might be able to guess it if you come see me play. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll be out soon. So
awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. Hopefully, not sure when this is going to come out, but hopefully it's been announced by then.
yeah, fully
announced. But yeah, that's cool. Like I'm pretty like interested, intrigued with like your philosophy of DJing.
Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting one, especially in a world nowadays where it's so easy to jump on trends and do things that are part of the status quo, and do things that are considered normal, but you sort of stick true to your roots and stick true to everything. How do you manage that in a sense where, as I mentioned, it's so hard nowadays to sort of do something different because it's not going to be as recognized, something that's so standard. How do you manage a climate where it is so people are reliant or people expecting certain things because of TikTok, social media, whatever it is, but you're sort of like, no, I don't like that. I want to do what I like.
Yeah, well, again, I think it comes back to what I was saying before. Like, because I do listen to all that kind of stuff, like I will listen to it and go, oh, so that there'll be something about it that I appreciate, you know? There's, like, I'm not a massive Fred Again fan, but there's a couple of Fred Again tracks where I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's so I'll be like, and also when I hear that kind of stuff, I'll be like, I've got an old record that's a sick old record that kind of does that or something like that, you know? And so there'll be something where I go, this kind of relates to this. And, so I'll like pull that record out and sort of recontextualize it with other records. Like I try to play a mixture of old stuff and new stuff when I play. Like I don't want to get bogged down in the world of one, even with vinyl, like it's very easy to get bogged down in the world of only playing old records if you're playing vinyl. I try to like buy vinyl by younger, new artists, that I really like, so that I have, and I try to always bring like a, sort of like a 50-50 mixture of old music and new music, so I don't just get stuck in a rut playing the same, sort of, a total set of old stuff or a total set of new stuff. So I think it's that, like I really do a lot of research, even if it's music I'm not going to play myself, just to know it. I mean, luckily I work in a record store, so, if I can go and put a Fred Again record on and do my work and listen to it and go, oh, okay, I understand. Or, things like that. So, yeah, I kind of like I almost would say that I probably like listen to music I don't really know or like more than music I like, because I then will go, all right, well, what's the thing about that I like that I can kind of, but not all, like not everything I hear is like that. Like not everything I hear I go, oh, I could take something from that, or I have something that would work. Sometimes I just go, no. So sometimes I gotta give up and be like, I'm not playing that, and it's just never gonna fucking happen.
So do you sort of like use what's currently trending as a way to influence?
Yeah, I mean, I would say currently trending in a
light way.
Like I'm not checking TikTok. I don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like
if you see someone's listening to something, a lot of times you're like, oh, I'll check that out, and then I'll probably sort of influence my sound to maybe even suit that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, and I also like research a gig I'm playing, so I kind of try to get an idea. Like even when I played Lost Sundays, I hadn't played there before. A friend of mine was playing 2 weeks beforehand, so I just went because I was like, all right, this is a big gig where I'm going to play to a lot of people. They're paying me like a good amount of money. I'm going to like do a little bit of extra research so that when I do it, I nail it. Because I don't like to turn up, unprepared or whatever. So, and I'll like ask my friends, oh, do you go to this party? What's it like? That kind of thing. So I try to like, just, do a little bit more research on things that I don't know about that I have to be involved in, or that, because I enjoy it. I enjoy like every single gig. I do less gigs now than I've ever done. I say no to a bit more stuff. But I'm probably the happiest I've ever been DJing. I don't look back at 20 years ago. I mean, I had heaps of fun 20 years ago when I first started DJing, but I don't look back at it and think it was any better than the amount of fun I'm having now. And even like, and you know, I had a bit of a sort of career peak around 2007, 2008. And there's sort of like a lot of people that know me from that time or know me from the time in Newcastle before. And they will, you know, they'll be like, oh, wasn't it great all those years? And like, all right. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm still having as much fun now. Like, I still do it on a regular basis. You know, I still play a lot of the big parties that are the equivalent of what I used to play then. And, you know, I still have as much fun as I ever did.
Why is that? Why do you think you don't sort of have that, I guess, reminiscing outlook on things? Why?
I think because I never stopped. So I think you definitely, when you don't do something anymore, you see things. I mean, we all see things in the past in a fonder way. But I think like just I try to, you know, stay updated with this stuff. I mean, partly it's my job working in a record store, also running events, I do some bookings for 77, you know, so I kind of have to stay on top of a lot of this stuff as well. And that extra stuff definitely helps me because I listen to a lot of people's mixes to like work out who's going to play on a Sunday at 77 or things like that. So, you know, having that kind of thing also keeps me. And, you know, I just want to be like, you know, I like to also, if I have a night off and I feel like it, I like to go to a party and check it out. So, you know, I like to know what's going to, you know, even when I'm going out and enjoying it, I kind of want to stay sort of updated on everything. And I have to for the record store as well. So, yeah.
So it's always been involved in music.
Yeah.
You haven't really stopped your involvement with the music.
Yeah.
It's easy, like, especially having such a, as you said, a peak in 2006, 2007 to sort of look back and be like, those are the heyday. That was the heyday. Those are the days. But you sort of don't look back at it like that. And it's pretty admirable to think, to be honest, because a lot of people do look back at things like that and think those were the days. Like,
yeah.
Is it like, you've already explained
I mean, they were all good. Like, it's not that it's, you know, there might have been times that are better, but like I don't remember enough of it. It's like,
it's not your fault.
But that's not to say that I haven't been like. I mean, I've almost quit a couple of times. You know, there's definitely. I feel like every time that things have come to a head in some way, I've either changed myself or the way I do it or the music that I play. You know, so. I've learned over many years to go with your heart and do what you love and not, you know, if, you know, like I was saying before that I like to like know what other people like and whatever. But if it got to a point where I didn't like what I was doing, I'm not going to do the thing I don't like, whether it's going to be the profitable thing that everyone wants me to do or not. Like I just can't do that. So there's been a few times, like I got to a point, I used to play a lot of hip hop and stuff, and I got to a point where I was like, I just don't want to play it anymore. Mainly just because I didn't find it as fun to DJ. Like I like to play music that I can mix for a long time, and you know, like I just was really. Got to a certain point and I was like, I just really like raves and you know, big parties and I mean small parties as well, but I like, you know, dance music and being with a bunch of friends. And I feel like things like vocals and you know, stuff like that kind of can almost like, it can bring people together in some ways, but it can also just like, it also like can also take away from an experience. And like, you know, sometimes it's just nice to be surrounded by your friends and there's just a sound system with a big like warm bassy thud, you know, and everyone feels like they're together and stuff like that. And I kind of sometimes like I think about like, especially the longer I've been DJing, I think about more of it as like, rather than you're like a part of a bigger experience rather than, you know, so it's not about me, it's about the party and the sound system, and it's about everyone who's there, and is everyone having a good time and feeling good and safe and all this kind of stuff. Like, you know, and if like, I'm more drawn to like these great environments than I am to like specific music or a specific, you know, a specific party or a specific type of party. Like, you know, if I see like thousands of people dancing to like some kind of crazy gabber or something, I'm like, that's sick, cool. And you know, you like, I find that I can enjoy those things without having to like love the music, you know, and I think part of that is the experience of togetherness, and that's the cool thing about like dance music and raving, and why I think that's part of why I'm still here, is like there's just nothing like that feeling when you know you're there with a bunch of friends and it's, you know, yeah.
I think it's a great point you bring up, because I was actually speaking about this the other day. But like, yeah, there's nothing better than like when you take a step back at a rave and you just like look at everyone, you're like, everyone like, you're in that moment where there's just music playing, everyone just having a great time. You look at one person, they're like laughing. There's another person, their friends are having a great time. Someone's like drinking at the bar, and you just like take a step and you sort of remove yourself from the situation, from the moment, and you just like look at it and like that's just crazy. I've experienced that so many times at like a party where I'm like, this is just crazy. Like, you sort of,
and seeing all kinds of different people of races, creeds, you know, all together, just like enjoying music. Like, I love parties where there's a real crazy mix of people, you know. I think that's the, you know, to me, like, I don't judge the success of one of my parties on how many people came or how much money I made, but I the ones that I always remember are like when there's like a crazy mixture of different people, you know. And like you said, you just see all this kind of stuff happening. And I love to stand at the back and just be like, this is sick, you know, or like, and then it's nice, obviously, to get back in there and be with your friends as well and make new friends and all that kind of shit. But yeah,
I'd imagine how good it must feel doing it at your own party.
Yeah.
Like, sit back, like, wow.
Yeah, it's a bit of a buzz
this.
for sure.
I sort of created this.
Yeah.
What parties do you run? Because obviously you have your involvements with Club 77.
Yeah, so I do the Sunday bookings for Club 77. I've run an electro party called Alien for about 5 or 6 years. And we just did at the time you're probably hearing this, we'll have just did a party at the Sydney Opera House for part of Vivid. With Radioactive Man. So that's... And Mark N from Newcastle, who's a famous like breakbeat hardcore DJ. So that's going to have been like a bit of a career highlight. I've been doing, like, Alien's done, you know, many warehouse parties around the city and hosted DJs from all around the world. I started doing that in around, it was actually after a Berlin trip, I think in 2015 or 2016. You know, I was just over there and people were playing. I mean, I was already sort of starting to get into electro music. I'd already been it's been part of what I've been buying for years, but, you know, I came back from overseas and I was just really fired up about that. And so I just started doing parties. And at the time, no one was really doing much of that stuff in Sydney, not a dedicated party. And so that was like just a thing I did. I also was doing a bit more of a breakbeat focused party, Breakbeat Chaos. That was a little bit like more like 1 or 2 a year. And I've done a few other parties like over the years. Nutshell Breaks was the original one I did. So it kind of came full circle with the Breakbeat Chaos again. And I've been involved in a bunch of different parties in Sydney and Newcastle over the years. It's running parties is a really fun thing. I try to not, it can be a bit consuming, so I try to not do it too much. Like, I've been doing it a lot less over the last couple of years just because there's a lot of parties happening. And, you know, sometimes it can be overwhelming of all the shit that's happening all the time. And, you know, there's not only are there heaps of warehouse parties and club nights, but there's like festivals and all this kind of shit. And it's like, you can never find a weekend without something, 10 things on the same weekend.
I think recently as well, it's been like that. Oh, actually, it's been a bit less. I feel like it's a bit more selective. I don't know. You probably have more experience within the scene, but as you mentioned, yeah, it's getting busier now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people to go out, but then there's also a lot of parties. And I totally understand throwing parties can be you can lose a lot of money, but you can also make a lot of money. And, like a lot of people try to make it their sort of living. I try to have like a diversified income stream, so no one thing has to be my, I wouldn't want to rely on DJing to be my total income. I wouldn't want to rely on parties. It's nice to be able to say no to things. It's nice to have a week off or, things like that. So that's why I keep a day job as well. I think going back to the question before, why I'm still happy doing it is because I have a little bit of I can step back from it, and a success or a failure doesn't make me or break me in either way, and I think that's how I can kind of have a sort of happiness about it and an even, stay on an even keel or whatever they say, because I'm not too like all my eggs are not in any one particular basket.
Yeah. I think it's really cool. I think, diversified income is pretty important, especially in a career, especially in an industry, or I know you don't like that word industry, but in the scene can be a bit fluctuating at times, especially when it comes to income and with the current cost of living. It's important. Yeah. It's important to be able to do a lot of things. And I mean, that's the thing too, like part of the reason that I've done a few less parties in the last couple of years is I'm like, do people have all the money to go to all of these parties we're throwing? Like, are we, is there too much on offer? I mean, there's less clubs now than ever before, but it's, people have less money as well. So, maybe should we put the brakes on a little bit? I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, I don't mind. Like, it's nice to have a weekend off too. Yeah. I think I mean, that's a good point you bring up, that there's a lot more parties on offer, but no one actually has the money to be able to go to all of them. Yeah. Especially in one night, because tickets are, and it's not, the promoters themselves are at the mercy of the economy, so they can only put tickets to a price where they feel like it's reasonable. But if
and all that kind of stuff, like setting the price of tickets, is so hard because I try to think about keeping the tickets as low as possible, but the expenses are high, and you're like doing that mathematics is
stressful.
Yeah, and the difference between $5 difference on the price of a ticket can sometimes be a loss or profit or a loss or things like that. It's getting that shit right is so hard. Like I mean, look, but also like you definitely want it to be affordable for people. Like, I want people to be able to afford to go to things. Like, so it's very hard. I mean, look, and a lot of DJs have put their fees up, and also you can't blame them. It's a cost of living crisis. Like, the problem is everyone's put the price up. But I mean, the real problem is that we have the financial problems of inflation and all this kind of stuff. And inflation's going up higher than the rise in wages. So, well, we're going to have this problem until that's been sorted out,
Sure.
And that's really a problem that the government needs to sort out. It's not something that party goers and party promoters can, really fix. Like, this is a problem that we have in, the politics and the financial system that we're in.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I don't think it's not one person's fault in the industry at all, because again, as I said, they're at the mercy of the government and the economy that we're currently in. So
totally,
they can only do with.
So it's just hard. And look, I understand both sides for sure, and hopefully it improves. So.
Hopefully we can go back. Hopefully we can go back to at least like just parties where people can afford to go, and then promoters also make their money, and DJs also make a good amount of money.
I think there's got to be a way where everyone can sort of, you know, everyone gets a fair go. And that's what I try the best myself to do, things like that. Like, I'm not always perfect, but, you know, that's what, you know, that's hopefully what I'm, you know, if everyone tried to do that, like, hopefully we'd get a little bit closer, but I don't know. I think people do try. It's just really hard.
But I think, as you said, like a $5 ticket price difference, like either selling a ticket at $20, $25 could literally mean a loss or a profit. So
yeah,
you know, you can always try.
And it's always like there's always like a last minute expense. You know, oh, you got to pay for the security now, or you got to pay for this, and you're like, oh shit. Like, you know, I've done parties where I've sold out and made it. Like, well, no, I've sold out and lost money. You know, because of a last minute expense. So, what do you do?
Yeah,
you know, but I'd rather throw the party and everyone be happy and not cut a corner, make sure everyone got paid all right and lose money, than, you know, freak out and cut corners.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because I'm worried about losing.
How much were tickets back in, like, when you first came to Sydney? Was it still the same sort of environment in terms of?
I guess a regular club night could be $5 or $10 entry.
But is that, if you adjust it for inflation, I know we're getting into the economics of things, but if you adjust it for inflation, do you think 20, 25, $30 tickets are reasonable now, or do you think it's still a bit too?
I think it's kind of reasonable. Like, it's like, again, it's so hard to say. Like, I mean, a bit of a problem that I think Sydney has as well is clubs are really worried about people not showing up, so they have like minimum bar spends, and so like the promoter has to, you know, what do we do? Do we discount the ticket so that everyone buys a ticket? But then some, like the events that I throw are kind of niche, right? So, you know, it's very hard to sort of, you know, work out, like, even if I made my ticket really cheap, is that going to make extra people come? Maybe not, you know. So even working out that price, I like, for me, I think $20 to $30 is affordable, you know, in general, like, but yeah, I mean, look, that's quite, you know, I'm not everyone as well. Like, I don't know, like, yeah, it's such a hard thing to say, but then I don't go watch many bands or things like that, but the price of a ticket to go see a band is like $200, $300, you know, and so paying $30 to get into a nightclub to see an international DJ, it's like, not crazy expensive in comparison.
I mean, yeah, really think about it, like, the amount of international acts I've seen that are world class, or I say world class in quotations, sort of a subjective, but like, yeah, for like $35, whereas people, like, if you're going all the way up to the A-list, is like The Weeknd. It's like $300. Even like Fred again, his tickets were $180, and he's probably the most expensive, like, I guess, electronic music artist that is out there in terms of ticket prices. But if someone else came down, favorite artist, like Lost Sundays had that block party, I think those tickets went last release, final release, for like $110 or something. Yeah, and they had just internationals on it. Yeah. So like, I guess if you look at it in the grand scheme of things at that point, then yeah, it is actually it's a good deal, especially if you do love the music. Yeah. I can understand people that don't like techno and electronic music, that's like, what the hell? But someone like you and I who enjoy electronic music, $20 to see one of your favorite acts is cheap as chips, really. Yeah.
But, I mean, there's also one of the real problems that we have, especially in Sydney, is there's other costs involved in going out. And because we don't, back to what I said about 24-hour travel, we don't have that. So the cost of an Uber, you know, like, that's $50. The cost of drinks, you know, you're not getting a drink for under $10 in a nightclub these days, and usually it's about $15, you know. So it's like, there's all those other costs that people have in a night out that, like, yeah, they don't involve the tickets. And I guess dance music's one of those things where you're there for a much longer amount of time. So though you do spend a lot more money on those other
Naturally, yeah.
the other things that keep you out all night. Whereas when you go watch Taylor Swift or some shit, you're just there for like
2 hours.
2 hours, and you're probably staring at her the whole time and not worrying about whether you need to eat or drink or whatever. You know, no one's. I bet you the beer lines for her is not too huge, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So that kind of shit like really changes it as well. I mean, yeah. There's so much that goes into it, but I guess it all comes back to the fact that like in the end we're all at the mercy of the, you know, whatever's happening in the global financial system, and that's what's screwing the, you know, the scene or whatever from the top down.
For sure, I agree. I think that's a good way to put it. We're at the mercy of the current financial system and economic system, but hopefully things turn out better, because these last 4 years have been an absolute roller coaster ride, to say the least.
But I mean, I think there's definitely things that we can do as promoters or punters. I hate the word punters too, even though I use party goers. You know, there's ways of making things more affordable, you know, supporting local acts. You know, do we really need to have 2 or 3 internationals on the bill? Do we just have one and, you know, then have some solid local talent supporting them? You know, and that kind of thing, you know, that like, you know, that kind of thing can also change it or whatever, or, you know, and just like go to places that you don't normally go and check out new things, or, you know, also like it's a lot cheaper if you just go to one club and stay in the club, you know. Club hopping, I that's one thing I really don't get. Like, why would you, like, I don't like lining up for shit at all. I'm not standing in a line. Like, I'd just rather get into the one club, you know, and stay in there all night and enjoy the journey of whatever happens.
For sure, that's a good
rather than like poke my nose in, or there's not quite enough people here yet, you know, and then maybe I'll find something better. Everyone's always looking for like the possibility of something better up the road or whatever, whereas like maybe it's like just settle in, give it an hour, you know, see what happens, rather than like, you know, yeah. Because I mean, I've had some really good times in clubs that aren't full.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even when you go overseas, like London, Berlin, Los Angeles, famous clubs that you hear about, they're not always full. You know, and sometimes you still have a really good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's been a great conversation. It's been about an hour and a half. It's been great. It's been good to sort of unpack your brain, especially with the vinyl collecting, which I thought was super interesting. I've never met like someone who's that into record collecting, especially with the amount that you have. So it's been cool unpacking that aspect of your
unpacking the vinyl.
Unpacking, yeah. No pun intended. But yeah, thank you for coming on. Obviously, hopefully everyone enjoyed that listen and watch if you are on YouTube or Spotify, depending on where you are. As usual, make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on Spotify, rate the episode. Besides that, again, hopefully you guys enjoyed that, because I know I for sure enjoyed sitting in this one. But yeah, thank you everyone, and take care.